Hello and welcome back to Rule the Game. In today's video, I'll show you how to play Sky Team, a game by Rémond, published by Spiel Masqué. This is a game for 2 players, lasts about 20 minutes, and it's recommended starting on age 12. Now this game is a nominee for Game of the Year in Germany 2024, and it is a very good game. But if you don't really like 2-player games, you don't really like highly thematic games, you don't like cooperative games, that might not be for you. If that's the case, then go to my channel, subscribe while you're there, and you'll find other games that might fit you better. For all the others who really want to see this game, and again, it's a very good game, I will show you the basic game, and you can then look up in your rulebook other modules for higher and more advanced challenges. And I will first show you what the requirement is to win the game. Then I'll show you how to actually play the game. I'll give you some hints for your first game. And in the very end, I'll show you how to set up the game.
Rule the game.
In Sky Team, you're trying to land a plane. One of the players is the pilot, the other one is the co-pilot, and the 2 of you are trying to get that plane down safely to the ground. So it's also not a big surprise that the requirement to land is that you're on the ground level, that you're at the airport, that all of your landing gear is deployed, all the flaps are deployed, and your plane has to be level to the ground, and your speed, which is the sum of these 2 dice here, has to be below the speeds that your brakes dictate. In this case, everything with a 4 or below is good enough to slow down fast enough so that you have a successful landing. In this case, we have 2 plus 1 is 3, so we've landed successfully. Sky Team is played in rounds. At the beginning of each round, the 2 players can talk to each other and can discuss what they want to achieve in this round. Now, during the actual game phase, you're not going to be allowed to talk to each other anymore. So the preparation phase is very important, but you're not allowed to talk about dice, the numbers that you want to have there, where you want to put those, and so on. It's more about the strategy, how to move your plane. Now, once you've decided what your strategy for this round is, we'll start this round by rolling the dice. Both players take all 4 dice that they have, roll the dice. Now, as you can see here at 6,000 feet and 2,000 feet, there's this little token here that you can take to yourself once you actually have reached the level where this little token is. And if you have a token available, at any point during the game, you can now re-roll. Each player by themselves can decide if they want to re-roll, but if one of the players takes the token, then they can re-roll as many dice as they want, but also the other player will be allowed to re-roll a bunch of dice, as many as they want. However, once this re-roll token has been used, it goes away and you can't use it anymore. In this flight here towards Montreal, you'll have 2 re-rolls that you have available during the game. Now at each altitude, we have an arrow here that points to who will start the game. At 6,000 feet, it's the pilot who is playing blue. Both players cannot see from the other what kind of dice they have. That's why we have these visors here, so that it's not visible to each other. Now we go turn-based. So the pilot starts, and what they have to do is they take one of the dice and they place it somewhere on the board. The only places where they have to place 2 dice during each round, so 2 out of the 4 they currently have, is here and here, the speed and also the horizontal axis. Now at the end of the round, if there's an empty space here, no die has been placed, in that case the game's lost. However, it's not necessary that you start with the axis or with the speed. You can start with anything you want. Now in our case, we still start with the axis. I'm going to place a 4 here, and let's say later during the game, the other player is going to place a 3 here. Now in our case, we have a difference of +1 towards blue, which means that we're going to tilt the plane +1 towards the blue. In case this arrow at some point in time during the game will point towards an X, you have lost the game, you have flipped your plane over. Now down here for the speed, it's the same thing. We're going to place 2 dice, And now it depends on what the sum of those two things are. And you see here the plus symbol, it indicates the sum of the two dice. If you end up with a sum that is between the blue and the orange arrow, you will move one field forward. So you'll push this thing here one down. Should you be able to reach a speed that is here past the orange one, in this case 9, which is past the orange thing, then you'll actually push this thing down by 2. If you have a speed below the blue arrow, so 2, 3, or 4, in this case we won't move at all. Important for you to know is that if there's an airplane here on the current field where you're at, and you're moving forward now, you move past this airplane, you will lose the game because there was an accident with this plane that was in this location. You also have to know that if at some point you move past the airport and you still haven't put your plane to the ground, you have also lost the game because you've flown past the airport. So these are the two actions that you have to play: the axis and the speed. Now the pilot, who is blue, also has other options. For one, they can put down the landing gear. Here, it doesn't matter where you place your die and when you place the die where, but the number that you have on your die needs to match the number that it says in the field. So here, if I place a 3 or a 4 in this field, I can then deploy this landing gear, I'll turn it to green, and will then move this arrow one up. So now the lowest speed that you can have to actually move one forward is now a 6 rather than a 5. Because the landing gear is down, it slows down your plane. You have to give a little bit more speed to actually move forward. Down here we have the brakes. You can start deploying the brakes rather early in the game, but here, as you can see by these arrows, you have to do it in order. To deploy the brake, you first have to place a 2, and there's only a 2 available here. And then you can also here turn this thing to green. And as you can see over here, you move the red arrow one over. So now the brake requires a maximum of 2 speed. These are now the actions that only a pilot can do. The co-pilot, on the other hand, they can here deploy the flaps. But again, you see here the arrows, which means that the flaps have to be deployed in order. Now this player has a 1, so they're going to play the 1 here on the 1-2 field. Only 1 and 2 is allowed. They're going to deploy it, which means they're going to turn the light to green. And as you can see here, we're going to move the orange arrow one up. What this means now is, because we're also slowing down because the flaps have been deployed, we now need 10 or more to move 2 fields forward. For 1 field forward is now 6 through 9. If we have 5 or less speed, we will not move forward on this track here at all. Then up here, we can communicate with the tower. In this case, what you do is you'll place a die here, and when you do that, you communicate with the tower that the plane here on the first field should get removed. We'll take it away. You can also play the 3 die here, and that will be 1, 2, 3, this airplane that gets removed. Remember that if there's still an airplane and you move one forward, you're gonna die. And last but not least, we can both play, and that's here blue and orange down here, we can both play any die down here. And what that means is that we're gonna place a coffee on here, and later during the game, if there's a coffee here, both players can pick up a coffee cup, and if they do so, they can rotate one of their dice by 1. You cannot change the 1 to a 6 or the 6 to a 1, but you can change a 1 to a 2, for example. And then you dispose of the cup, and you'll later have to place another die down here to get another coffee cup to be able to do this move. As you can see, all the fields that have numbers on them, there you actually have to have a matching die. All the fields where there's no number on it, the number that is on your die doesn't really matter. However, of course, if you place a die here on the radios, then the number that you have on the die will matter for where you're going to remove a plane. As you can see now, currently I've made a mistake with the blue player and also with the orange because there are only 4 dice and I haven't really placed the die here yet or here, which means I won't be able to cover them completely, which means we're not going to succeed in this round. Once both players have played all their dice, then we're done with this round. We'll decrease the altitude by 1,000 feet. Both players then take back their dice, put them back here again. They both roll them again, and we're ready for the next round. There are a few special cases. This one is one where you're at the airport, but you're still at 1,000 feet. So now reduce your speed so that you don't move one forward. So that in this round, there's no movement here at the airport level, but you're just going to move down here once you finish the round. If you're this way around, you're not at the airport yet, but you're at ground level. You crashed into the ground. You lose. Should you be at ground level and at the airport, now we're going to end up in the final round. For the final round, our speed doesn't really matter now on this track up here anymore, but the speed now matters here for the brakes. The sum of the 2 dice now for the ground level has to be less than where this red arrow is. So we need to achieve less than 4, which we could get with a 2 and a 1. The speed was successful. We will also still play here dice on the axis. So 1 is here. This one has also played a 1. We're not moving. We're horizontal. We fulfill the condition. As you can see, the only thing you still have to fulfill now is that you need to somehow deploy this landing gear over here, and you have to deploy this flap. This, the players might do however they want to do. Most likely it makes sense that they're first going to play a couple dice down here so that they have espresso cups then, and they can adjust the die that they need later on to deploy, but that's up to you how you do it. For a successful landing, there can also not be a plane here anymore at the airport, otherwise you'll cause an accident. And that's it. If you're able to deploy this landing gear, you're able to deploy this last flap, you have won. You've succeeded in this level. Congratulations. Next up, take up another airport. There's so many different challenges here. There will be additional modules that you can use. There's kerosene, there is an intern, there are different turbulences that you have to navigate. Go and try those. Good luck to you. And here's some hints for the first game. First of all, I suggest that you try to move 2 fields forwards in the very beginning. It's much easier later on to actually hold and not move on further in the game, because the more landing gear, the more flaps you deploy, the slower you're going to get, the higher the numbers that you're going to actually have to roll to move forward. So I suggest early on, try to move 2 forward if you can, if you don't have any airplanes that are on the way to the airport. I personally like to remove all the airplanes that are in our way as quickly as we can, although we usually don't go much further than maybe a 3 or a 4 in advance. And then after like the first or second round, you really have to start deploying landing gear and flaps, because otherwise time is going to run out and you still have to deploy both of these things. Of course, you also have to deploy brakes. You don't have to necessarily go to all the way to a 6. Usually a 4 can also be enough, because in the last round you might be able to actually adjust your speed by playing coffee cups. I would suggest anyway that in the second to last and last round, if you have good dice, try to use a bunch of them to actually take a coffee break so that you get more coffee cups on the board, so that the other player, in case they don't have very good dice, that they can use those coffee cups to adjust. You definitely need coffee cups in the very end to adjust up here for the axis. During the game, it doesn't really matter where you are. During the game, you can be always tilted, as long as you don't go into a spin by getting onto an X. If you go up and down here, it doesn't really matter so much. So personally, I usually play, if I have one, I play a 3 to 5 somewhere here, in the assumption that the other player will be able to compensate somewhere within the limit. Now, you cannot talk to your partner anymore during the game, but you can try to indicate a little bit what you have in your dice by placing them strategically. For example, if you've agreed with your partner that you want to go as fast as possible now, that you want to move 2 fields forward, and you only have low dice, now either you can reroll or you play the highest die that you have into the speed area so that the partner already knows what kind of die they have to place so that you can move 1 or 2 fields forward. Likewise, if you have only high or only low dice, you might have to indicate that rather quickly by placing a couple of dice here in the speed and the axis so that your partner can help you with it. If you only have high or low dice and you wait until the very end, you might lose because your partner didn't know earlier on what they were supposed to play. And they might have played a 1 here while you only have 6s to play on this side. That will definitely make you lose. That's how you play Sky Team. Now, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please subscribe to my channel. And if you still want to see it, I'll show you how to set up the game right afterwards. To set up the game, both players should be sitting next to each other with the control panel between them. For the first game, it's recommended that you fly to Montreal. So you take Montreal here and you place it in here. And then you take here the altitude level, you set it to 6,000 feet. You'll add here the reroll tokens wherever the symbol is. And over here, you'll add airplanes wherever there's an airplane symbol here. You'll then add the axis disk with the arrow pointing up towards the middle. And you'll place on every green light, you'll place one of these tiles here. You put the coffees next to the control panel. You'll take the arrows, you'll put the orange one here between the 8 and the 9. And the blue one here between the 4 and the 5, and the red one here below the 2. Both players then get their screen. They'll get 4 dice each, and we're ready to go.